I've seen a lot of the more well-known and celebrated James Cagney pictures. I've seen a lot of the more well-known and celebrated Humphrey Bogart pictures. So imagine my delight when browsing the internet I found a gangster movie that had the both of them in the same film. It was directed in 1939, which I guess was a little before Bogey's stardom, but it was when Cagney's star power was in full swing. In the film, the two are part of a group of men serving in the First World War. When it is over, Cagney returns to the States and finds he's no longer welcome at the garage he used to work at. Rent has increased and jobs are hard to come by. Prohibition has also come into effect, and a chance encounter with some criminals selling alcohol opens up the doors to a life of blondes and bootlegging for Cagney. As a rising star in the underworld, in his new circle of friends and coming across old ones, he experiences undercurrents of jealousy and betrayal, which ignite into becoming the main meat of the film. I really enjoyed The Roaring Twenties. It took its time before the bootlegging and gave us a sincere and detailed account of the struggle of Cagney upon his return to the US. His frustration with the unjust and quickly changing world around him, his initiation into a life of crime, his fruitful time at the top, and, as is custom with this kind of film, his eventual downfall. What surprised me was the strength of the characters. They weren't just there to show us the life, they were the life. Their dealings felt real, and the relationships weren't simply just the blonde girlfriend, the comic relief sidekick and things like that. The relations between the characters was handled tremendously maturely. Characters were multi-layered and said complex things with simply their facial expressions and body movements, as well as the atypical 1930s swift and sharp dialogue. The movie is set over the course of several years, 21 in fact, of Cagney's life, intercut with narrated montages showing us the changing and developing landscape of the American way of life, from evolving social classes to countrywide mood, changing illegality of things and the stock market crash to, of course, the rise of the bootlegger and the Tommy gun. It's a real praiseworthy aspect of the film that the hold-ups, shootouts and fistfights, in general the gangster side of things, more than anything are a necessity and a backdrop to the best feature of the film, the already mentioned relationships between the main players. From the contagiously infectious grinning of Cagney's Eddie Bartlett to Bogey's fierce, aggressive, sneering and sadistic Georgie Halley, the young naive singer Priscilla Lane torn between two men, and the aging veteran Speaksay owner Gladys George. Probably the most interesting of the supporting cast, with an itching want for Bartlett but a rational sense in knowing her place and never managing to express her true feelings to a distracted Eddie. It's all about the characters in The Roaring Twenties. Without getting into spoilers, seeing how everyone starts up and then how they all end up, some happily ever after and others cradling their dead loved ones, it almost brings a tear to the eye. Throughout the film we are completely immersed into their world. We were there when Cagney was introduced to it, and we never leave it until they do. Interestingly, there are no major cop characters or district attorneys or anybody like that. Instead, the film chooses to focus on all these characters who are in the life. The gangster movies of the 1930s came along with the messages of condemnation of violence and showing the fruitlessness of and the ugliness of the life. But the actual agenda of these films, if we're being honest, and of those crime films that would arrive decades later like Goodfellas and American Gangster, was to provide audiences with thrills and action. And The Roaring Twenties is a thrilling film, a worthy candle bearer to abridge and close the curtain of the Warner Brothers gangster pictures of the 1930s, which would soon be replaced with the thrill of World War II action movies in the next decade. I give The Roaring Twenties an 8 out of 10.